Have you ever felt your heart split in two, not because of death, but because of betrayal from the very child you raised? That's what happened to me. One evening, my son called. Not to ask how I was doing, not to share good news, but to tell me that he was already married. No invitation, no place for his mother at the table. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he demanded that I fund their future, saying it was the least I could do. When I refused, his voice turned cold. Mom, if you can't support the woman I love, then maybe I don't need you at all. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just excluded. I was erased. My name is Linda Monroe. I'm 55, a widow, and for the last 20 years I've carried the weight of building a life from nothing. After my husband, Mark, died of a sudden heart attack, I swore I would never let grief destroy me. I poured my energy into my small interior design business, late nights drafting layouts, early mornings with contractors, endless client meetings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every choice I made, every dollar I saved, was with one person in mind: my son, Daniel. Daniel was my world, my reason to keep moving when mornings felt unbearable. I raised him to be kind, thoughtful, and hardworking, and for the longest time, I believed I'd succeeded. He grew into a handsome young man with a bright future ahead, which is why, when he introduced me to Vanessa, I wanted so desperately to believe she was the right one for him. Vanessa was the kind of woman who could light up a room the second she entered. She had a way of making people feel as though she saw only them, as though they were the most important person in the world. She shook my hand with confidence, called me Mom by the end of dinner, and flattered Daniel so effortlessly that I could see his chest swell with pride. She was radiant, magnetic, but behind the sparkle in her eyes, I noticed something darker, a sharpness, like broken glass hidden under silk. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just overprotective. After all, no one would ever feel good enough for the boy I'd raised alone. I wanted him happy, and if Vanessa made him smile, wasn't that all that mattered? But soon, little cracks began to show. Phone calls during the night, strangers asking for Daniel, their tone aggressive. I brushed it off as a mistake. Then came odd charges on his account, expensive handbags, spa retreats, jewelry far beyond what he could afford. He insisted everything was fine, but I could see the truth written across his tired eyes. Vanessa was draining him, bleeding him dry while wrapping it all in the language of love. And Daniel, my Daniel, was blind to it. He defended her fiercely whenever I dared to ask questions. Mom, she just has expensive taste. I can handle it. But I knew better. I'd handled bills, debts, the crushing reality of loss. This wasn't just taste. This was manipulation. And yet, despite the gnawing in my gut, I stayed silent. Because if I pushed too hard, I risked losing him. I had already buried one piece of my heart. I couldn't bear to lose the other. But deep down, I knew Vanessa wasn't just a passing mistake. She was a storm, and sooner or later, she would tear apart everything I had fought to build. The breaking point came one quiet afternoon when I sat at my kitchen table, sorting through a pile of mail. At first, I thought it was just another batch of bills and advertisements. But tucked in the middle were contracts, thick envelopes with embossed seals, invoices stamped past due. My name stared back at me from the signature line, scrawled across multiple agreements I had never seen before. Wedding planners, florists, caterers, vendors I hadn't even heard of. The total balance? Over $80,000. All tied to my credit. All on me. My hands shook as I flipped through page after page, the forged signature mocking me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just theft. It was betrayal, dressed up as love. I drove straight to Daniel's apartment, my pulse hammering so hard I could barely grip the wheel. He opened the door, smiling as though nothing was wrong, but when he saw the papers in my hand, his expression shifted. Daniel, I said, my voice trembling, did you know about this? My name, my signature, is on all of these contracts. $80,000. Daniel, do you understand what this means? Before he could answer, Vanessa appeared from behind him, draped in silk as if she were already the bride of some royal ceremony. She pressed her hand to her chest, gasping dramatically, tears welling in her eyes. Linda, she whispered, please don't be angry. We didn't want to overwhelm you. We thought if you saw how beautiful it could all be, you'd understand. Understand? My entire financial future had been hijacked, and she wanted me to understand. I turned back to Daniel, searching for the boy I raised, the boy who once promised me he'd take care of me when I was old. But his jaw was tight, his eyes cold. Mom, he said firmly, Vanessa is my family now. She just wants us to have the wedding we deserve. Why can't you support that? Why do you always look for the worst in her? Because she forged my name. I shouted, my voice breaking. Daniel, this isn't love. This is manipulation. She's using you. Can't you see it? Vanessa buried her face into his shoulder, sobbing. I knew this would happen. I knew she'd never accept me. And then Daniel delivered the words that carved a wound deeper than any blade could. Mom, if you can't respect Vanessa, then you can't respect me. I'd rather lose a parent than lose her. For a second, the world went silent. My son, my only son, chose a stranger's lies over his mother's truth. I left his apartment with those words echoing in my ears. They shattered me. But grief has a way of hardening into something else. By the time I reached home, the sorrow had already begun to burn into resolve. If Daniel was too blind to see the truth, then I would open his eyes. Even if it meant he would hate me forever. I remembered something my late husband once told me, Linda, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, dig deeper. His voice echoed in my head like a warning bell. And so I dug. At first, it was small things, nights when Vanessa worked late, but left no trace of employment, bills that never matched her supposed income, acquaintances who knew her by different last names. I felt like I was chasing shadows, but every shadow left a trail. I turned to Harold, a dear old friend and a retired attorney who had spent decades in family law. Over cups of coffee at his cluttered kitchen table, I laid everything out. The forged contracts, the debts, the emotional chokehold she had on my son. Harold listened quietly, then leaned back with a sigh. Linda, he said, you're dealing with a professional manipulator. She's not new at this. She's practiced. Together, we started digging through public records, marriage licenses, court documents, anything with her name attached. It didn't take long to find the cracks. Vanessa had a history, and it wasn't just messy breakups. There were unpaid debts, businesses registered and dissolved within months, engagements that ended mysteriously when large sums of money disappeared. There were even restraining orders, filed quietly, scattered across different states like breadcrumbs. It was a pattern, clear as day. Target a man, drain him dry, vanish before the law could catch her. But I knew Daniel wouldn't take my word for it. He was too far under her spell. I needed proof he couldn't deny. So I built a file. Every bank transfer she'd coaxed from him, every contract signed under my name, every phone call she made to vendors. Piece by piece, I documented the empire of lies she had constructed. And then, as if fate wanted me to win, came the unexpected twist. A woman reached out, Vanessa's cousin. She'd heard about what was happening and wanted to warn me. On the phone, her voice trembled as she told me everything. She's done this before. There was a man, Ethan Clark. Vanessa promised to marry him, and he emptied his life savings to fund her lifestyle. She walked away with nearly $500,000. He never recovered. Linda, your son is next. Hearing Ethan's name put a human face on all the documents and records I'd been gathering. It wasn't just numbers or cold legal filings anymore. It was real people, ruined lives. My son was standing on the same cliff's edge, and Vanessa was the one pushing. That was the moment I knew I had all the ammunition I needed. I had the records, the testimonies, the paper trail. Now I just had to pull the trigger. The opportunity came cloaked in false sweetness. Vanessa called me one afternoon, her voice dripping with forced warmth. Linda, we're having a family dinner this Saturday. It'll mean so much if you come. After all, we're practically family already. It was bait, and she thought I would swallow it whole. She imagined me sitting quietly at the table, smiling politely while she flaunted her control over my son. But she had no idea I had prepared a performance of my own. The evening began as expected. Vanessa played the doting fiancé, clinging to Daniel's arm, boasting about their dream wedding and future home. She had the audacity to lift her glass and toast to new beginnings, while my son, blinded by love, gazed at her like she was a saint. Halfway through the meal, she launched into another monologue about the life they would build together. That was when I calmly placed a slim leather folder in the center of the table and slid it toward her. Her eyes lit up, expecting a check or perhaps a gesture of approval. But when she flipped it open, her smile faltered. Inside was her life's true story: copies of lawsuits, unpaid loans, restraining orders, even photographs of her wrapped around Ethan Clark, her last victim. And, to make it sting deeper, copies of text messages she thought were erased, detailing her schemes. Daniel leaned forward, his fork slipping from his hand. "Vanessa, what is this?" For a moment, the mask cracked. But then she smirked, tossing her hair back with defiance. "This doesn't prove anything. People make mistakes. Old relationships don't define me." She thought she could brazen her way out. That's when I pressed the second button. Literally. From hidden speakers in the dining room, her voice spilled out. A recording, crystal clear. Vanessa, laughing with a friend. "Daniel is so easy. His mom's credit is gold. By the time I'm done, I'll have the house too." The room fell into silence so thick you could hear Daniel's breathing quicken. His face drained of color, his knuckles white as he gripped the table. He turned toward her, betrayal written across his face. Is this really you?" he whispered. Vanessa tried to laugh it off, but the sound rang hollow. "Come on, Daniel, you know people edit recordings all the time." And then, right on cue, Harold entered the room with two uniformed officers. Calm, steady, unstoppable. Forgery, fraud, identity theft, coercion, he listed evenly as he handed the officers a file. Vanessa's confidence shattered. She stood abruptly, eyes darting for the door, but one of the officers blocked her path. The other recited her rights as she sputtered excuses no one believed. For the first time in months, Daniel's eyes met mine, clear, wide, and full of the dawning truth. The spell had broken. Vanessa had nowhere left to run. That night will forever be etched in my memory, the sound of handcuffs snapping shut, Vanessa's sharp protests echoing down the hallway as the officers led her away. In that moment, her empire of lies, carefully constructed brick by brick, crumbled into dust. No more masks, no more schemes. Just a con artist finally cornered by her own greed. Daniel sat frozen at the table, his hands trembling, his face pale as porcelain. The truth was brutal, but it was undeniable. When the front door closed behind Vanessa and the officers, he collapsed into sobs, deep, broken cries that came from somewhere raw inside him. It wasn't only betrayal he felt. It was shame. Shame for ignoring the signs. Shame for doubting me. Shame for letting it go so far. I went to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. For a long time, neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say, really. Healing wouldn't come overnight. Trust had to be rebuilt, not only between us, but within him, trust in his own judgment, in his ability to see people for who they truly were. In the days that followed, I tied up the loose ends Vanessa had left behind. The fraudulent contracts she had pushed through, nullified. The credit lines she had tried to open in my name, closed. The wedding dress she had already ordered, an obscene gown dripping with rhinestones and arrogance, I sold. The money, along with other refunded deposits, I redirected to something that mattered, a local support fund for women who had been blindsided by financial abuse. Women who, like me, had nearly lost everything to someone else's deception. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was restoration. A chance to turn pain into purpose. Daniel struggled, of course. Nights where he barely ate, days where he walked aimlessly through the house, replaying every word Vanessa had ever told him. But slowly, with time, he began to find his footing. Counseling helped. So did the quiet evenings we spent together, just mother and son, watching old movies or sharing stories about his father. For the first time in a long time, we were truly present with one another. As for me, I didn't feel victorious. People often say revenge is sweet, but that's a lie. Revenge is heavy. It weighs on you because it means you had to walk through fire to get there. But sometimes, it's necessary. Necessary to protect the people you love. Necessary to remind yourself that silence is not survival. And though Vanessa thought she had stolen my son, in the end, she gave him back to me. Not the naive boy she nearly destroyed, but a man who had learned, painfully, the price of misplaced trust. We are rebuilding now, slowly, carefully. And maybe the cracks will never fully disappear. But in their place, something stronger is forming. Resilience, understanding, and above all, a bond that no lie can ever sever again. My story isn't just about revenge, it's about protection, about refusing to let deceit dismantle the people you love. Sometimes the greatest threats don't come with fists or weapons. They come dressed in charm, with sweet words and promises that rot from the inside out. And if we stay silent, they take everything. So I'll ask you, if you were in my place, would you have risked losing your child in order to save them? Or would you have stepped back and let them learn the painful way? Tell me in the comments. Justice begins with courage, ours.